gonna have to bear with me. I'm uncomfortable. I'm not used to all this. Don't know quite how to deal with it. Be real happy if it all just went away. I wish.
Right now, we do have a world that is highly sexualized. You can't drive down the street without seeing billboards. Certainly TV is full of it, magazines. We are a highly sexualized culture. So it's very hard for people to develop that level of maturity where they are constantly aware of where the boundaries are, how to use creative energy well, how not to tip over the boundaries in an environment that is screaming sexuality at us.
What are you gonna do? We're all guides through the night, with no compass, no map. Face it, the work world is a minefield. It's what you can't see that destroys us.
Sexuality is real. Sexual energy is real. We are sexual beings, and we work in the workplace together. And the purpose of the workplace is not for sexualization. The purpose of the workplace is for work-related energy to lead us to organizational productivity.
Hello, sweetheart.
Sexuality in the workplace is an interesting challenge. The only way we seem to be dealing with sexuality in the workplace is sexual harassment. And perhaps some of that could diminish if we could find a way to talk about our sexual attraction to one another.
It's very natural for us to expect to build some relationships in the workplace, and we know that a very high percentage of persons meet their spouse in the workplace.
There's the innate sexuality that we each bring with us as individuals into the workplace, and if we're going to be real in the workplace, if we're bringing our full selves there, that's there. Then how does that translate to keeping a sense of propriety within the workplace?
Oh, I remember going to a meeting once. 6 men, 3 women, one of whom was just over the top. The clothes, the makeup, the perfume, and her behavior. Well, 2 of those guys practically fell over themselves vying for her attention, which, of course, left the other women completely invisible.
Biology is not going to change. I don't care what you dress people up in or how much you pay them.
Oh, well, it just got curiouser and curiouser, I'll tell you. Because then everybody else in the room had to start competing just to be heard over this silliness.
Sexual attraction in the workplace. It is not going away. It is always the kind of taboo stuff that in America that becomes hard to deal with.
I used to have a boss who had some comment every time I bent down to pick up something. And because he was my boss, I had to laugh it off or make some joke remark or act like it was my fault. But the trickiest times are when it's a customer who's pulling this stuff. Maybe it's just his way of communicating, or he's just bored, or mindlessly amusing himself. Shoot, maybe he honestly does like me and thinks he's just breaking the ice. When it comes to someone I work with, I could probably tell which one it is. It's one thing to stand up to some supervisor. It's a whole lot stickier when profit is at risk.
I think the way we deal with sexual harassment isolates an issue that, again, is part of a broader issue that needs to be looked at. It's a very real issue for organizations and has bottom-line implications, but we really need to look beyond that.
All this talk about harassment, as if that's the only problem. What bothers me is the subtle stuff, the little put-downs, that look that crosses the line, the psychological control games, not being heard. It's the behavior and attitudes that can't be codified conveniently into laws. They'll be the real test of us.
Hey, Gino.
Wendy.
Gino, look what I found. This is so great. You remember when I said I had an uneasy feeling about the numbers you ran? Remember I said that? Well, look at Gino, look. This is what you get when you factor in normal seasonal fluctuations. Aren't you relieved I found this before the 4 o'clock meeting?
We need to understand all of the behaviors way before sexual harassment so that we can manage sexual energy in a much more responsible way, so as to have more work-related energy available for the task at hand, instead of having work-related energy be lost to sexualization of the relationships between people.
So how long has it been that men and women have worked side by side for long periods of time, have had to travel together, really become soulmates at the workplace because they're sharing knowledge and they're planning and so on? The matter of keeping boundaries then, preventing something that is a very close relationship from becoming more intimate or violating some other kind of commitments and contracts, like a marriage contract, that's a difficult issue. And people have to really begin to know who they are as persons and to recognize what's happening between the two persons.
But what it's really about is what's appropriate. And what's appropriate is to have boundaries.
Boundaries are by definition determined by the person who holds them, who wants them met and honored. So we need to understand somebody else's boundaries and need for boundaries, whether it be around physical contact or verbal intimacy.
The idea of men and women relating with each other, being familiar with each other, understanding how the other one operates, has tremendous benefit, I think, in terms of how successful we can be at whatever projects we may be working on. Sometimes, though, that creates a lot of discomfort for other people because they don't understand that these people have such a relationship where they know each other and they're very familiar with each other, but there's nothing about it that is sexual. It is simply having a familiarity, enough familiarity with another person that you can almost kind of complete their sentence. You're in sync with them, and it makes for a beautiful working relationship. But it also makes some other people quite uncomfortable because they don't have that, and they don't have that connection.
You are kidding me. No, I am not. I tell you, she was there. She got up on that stage and sang, Mr.
Oh, I would have done anything to be there.
No lip syncing, mind you. It was loud and proud. Oh. Millie Jackson, look out.
There you go, Rosa.
Mina, I told you something was going on between those two. Look over there.
You know that, a little taste of outside love.
No!
And she did the whole thing. Put your rags in a brown paper bag and hit the dough.
Let the knob hit you in the back, Jack, 'cause I don't never want to see you no more.
I tell you, that very white woman has a whole other self inside of her. Hand gestures, attitude, the whole thing.
You know, I could not make that fit with the client we do business with.
Believe it. I tell you, I'll be looking at her in a whole new way next Wednesday. You make me laugh at that meeting and I will kill you.
I can't believe 2 years ago she was sitting there where I am.
Divorced, mother of two, with a lot of ambition.
It takes more than ambition to get where she is that fast. Look at that. She's got them all brain dead. She has them dangling from a string. Well, you don't have to ask me how to get ahead around here.
You hear all these comments about women particularly sleeping their way to the top, which I find extremely annoying, because it seems like you cannot be professional and be competent and move up to the top. Those terms seem to be exclusive for women, whereas for men, it's not a problem.
That's all for me?
It's been slow.
Giselle is looking hot today.
What?
I notice she's wearing those throw me down and ravage me shoes again. Oh, she's something. Giselle, come on, man, we're all thinking it. I mean, what does she expect, right?
Yeah.
There have been times when I've asked individuals, how do you know that she's really hot? Or how do you know that she's really this item? And if you don't know, maybe you ought to knock it off, because it's really not healthy. And I also know that when I have those conversations, I'm real clear that I'm at a very high level of risk, because that might not be what that individual wants to hear. But I also know that the risk for me is, if I don't step up to the issues, then chances are pretty good I will be seen as a phony in trying to do this work. And so I have to live with myself, and I have to be true to the relationship as I know it.
I don't believe that. Wade's my friend. We work together. He wouldn't undercut me like that.
It's not just him, Giselle. Face it, business is nowhere near as interesting as people are. Or haven't you noticed what a rumor factory this place is? I'm just trying to be helpful. Frankly, it makes it harder to do my work.
I really thought he and I were friends. I guess you just can't trust anyone.
The challenge of the many cultures within the workplace, especially when you have two people of the same culture and there's a genuine friendship, the challenge is that other people see that, and because it's not their orientation, they may perceive that as being something very sexual. I think there are even times when people see two men who are friendly, they may make the wrong assumptions. I think this is where, again, the individuals need to be aware of how the differences in culture will impact how people perceive that.
When cultural differences are real, which they are, even the issue of what is sexualizing is dependent upon an understanding of one's intention.
We are in a place of discovery around how to be in relationships at work, and that includes the area of touching. We have to discover or rediscover what the real norms are, what's okay between men and women, between men, between women. They all look different. And I think at a soul level, people do know, but it's gotten all confused with all the cultural overlay of the hypersexuality today.
Alan, you're doing it. That's wishful thinking again.
You're right. I do that. Okay. Jenna, run that by me again. I'll listen harder this time.
Okay. We got 5 manufacturers with downtime. 2 we've had delivery problems with. 1 is an unknown entity, and Blair's having labor problems. So that leaves Franklin, who has 7 weeks max.
And the line has to be out on the racks by February.
Wait. What about that little firm in Florida, the one...
That has great cutters.
Yes, I just talked to them last month. You're right, if we can get them to cut the fabric.
And have Franklin just do construction.
Yes! Then it's doable!
Oh, we're gonna pull this one out of the fire yet. Oh, you guys are good. You're really good. All right.
I have some wonderful relationships with the people that I work with, both men and women, and they are exciting. There's a lot of energy that goes into these relationships, and we can create some very wonderful things. And I would hate to think that because of these relationships or because of what people see us doing in terms of the level of talk that's going on and the energy that there was something going on.
Where I often see people getting in trouble here is when things aren't going well at home. There's some kind of stress at home. The relationship that they have is frayed in some way. And so there's a woundedness about them that they're bringing to work right now, and a vulnerability then that is just there. And we all are human beings. We've all been there before. But when we aren't really paying attention, that can lead then to crossing a boundary that we wouldn't have crossed if we hadn't felt that vulnerable. And sometimes we even misinterpret someone being nice to us as suggesting that they're also interested in a sexual way.
Paul moved out last week. The boys blame me, I think. They're just getting to that age when their dad is more important to them.
Jenna, I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do?
You've been great. Paul's been really big on pointing out my deficiencies. But when I come in here, you're so positive about my ideas. There's been days when that's the only thing that's made me feel like I was worth anything. I mean it, Alan. Thanks.
You're not deficient. So let's put that one right out of your mind.
Well, if we don't get this contract, my bank account's gonna be pretty darn deficient. That's the last thing I need on top of everything else. You have no idea how fast my boys go through sneakers.
I think sexuality in the workplace exists. It's either ignored or it's recognized. When it goes ignored, I think it can cause any kind of a team relationship to destruct.
Because I don't think it's going to sell.
Well, Lois, it would have been nice if you'd have mentioned this yesterday or the day before. This thing is due tomorrow, and as you have pointed out to me all evening, if we don't bring in this contract, none of us may be here in 6 months' time.
That's why it's so important to get it right. Alan, help me out here.
I think you're doing a first-rate job, Jenna.
Thanks, Alan.
I also understand that we all have to feel good about it. Lois, let us know exactly what you need.
I need to get out of here.
Lois?
Let her go.
When you're taking something as big as sexuality in the workplace, it needs to be dealt with, and if it's not dealt with or recognized, then it can start the downward slide. And I think that ends in sexual harassment, lawsuits, and destructive team patterns.
The bigger issue is, how do we start to recognize earlier in the process that maybe I'm kind of attracted to this person? How am I going to manage my energy?
It's hard, you know. Some weeks you're at work more than you're at home, and if you don't feel valued at home.
How could I imagine she'd take it that way? I can't control everybody's home life, but they bring it to work with them whether you like it or not.
Alan has always understood and supported me. We have a real creative spark. I know a lot of really good relationships that have been built on a whole lot less.
Look, the company spends all kinds of money sending us to these workshops and seminars on team building. They're all about being real, getting to deeper communication, honesty. I was just doing those things.
As that misunderstanding draws these people further and further apart, then they become more and more hostile, and what began as a friendship evolves into animosity, evolves into hostility, and ultimately destruction.
It's a shame, too. Jenna and I had such a good rapport. But for work, getting past this one's going to be tricky.
It's never really been the same since. We're all trying to act like it is, of course. Do you think there was something going on between those two all along and I never noticed it? I'm still trying to figure it out.
People can misread communications, they can misread signs, they can misread body language and think that it's an opening for something that it isn't. So here again, language is all we have to use as human beings to be able to communicate with one another. So I think it's just very important that people take ownership for their own communication, their own relationship, and for themselves, and be assertive in a way of asking questions to get clarity around things that they see so that they don't misinterpret what those are.
One of the major criteria that we can all use, it's very simple, is to ask ourselves, am I willing to go home and tell my partner what's going on emotionally for me in this relationship with someone? What's going on in my actions with this person? And if we feel comfortable going home and talking to our spouse about it or our partner about it, we're probably on pretty safe territory. But if we begin to hide, that's the warning sign.
Think of sexuality as power, as free-floating power that has the potential to make a relationship very positive, very energizing, very constructive and creative, or has the potential to destroy that relationship and turn them into enemies.
There can be very positive relationships built out of congeniality and a closeness that can, gets to bottom line relationships, trust and the ability to work well together and have fun doing it. On the negative side, that sexuality, if used improperly as a base of power and control, can be very destructive. And both genders know when it's being ill-used.
And when we spend that much time with people in a work environment, work setting that is high stress, high energy, shared successes, shared failures, we bond in a way that sometimes crosses the line.
On Tuesday, I was riding on this stand. Don't worry about it. And you? Congratulations, huh?
Thanks. Guess what? They finally gave me my own territory. Can you believe it?
Of course I can believe it. Who trained you?
Oh, God, you're great, Stan. I really, really appreciate all your help. I'm going to call a bunch of my friends and treat them to the best dinner I can find.
Oh, wait. I hope you're not talking about tonight. Come on, I mean, let's celebrate first.
Oh, God, can I take a rain check on that? No, it's just that I've been so preoccupied getting this far that I've neglected my friends. I promised them that the first thing I was...
First thing tomorrow. That'll give you time to make proper reservations, to reach a few people, and buy yourself a new dress. You know, we made this thing happen together. I think this was a joint effort, and there's no reason why it can't keep being one.
Stan, don't.
That's not what you said back in Seattle.
That was nothing. I had jet lag. My medication hit me like a ton of bricks. We've already been through this. A few mistaken kisses does
Look.
not give...
I can still help you. I've got Walter's ear. I'll know when a better territory opens up. And it's good for you to have someone you can call in the middle of the night for advice. Come on, we're both single. Nobody has to know.
This isn't funny.
Come on, let's lighten up.
Stan, cut it out. You're scaring me.
I get it. Pretend he's Mr. Wonderful until you get where you want to go. Is that it?
You're nuts. You know that?
You'll regret this.
All I could feel was my heart bounding in my chest and in my ears. I couldn't think. And then there was this whole parade of thoughts. What had I done to encourage this? Was I too friendly? Did I send out the wrong messages?
This is unbelievable. Nobody has been more helpful to Annette than I have. Ask anyone. I was as close to a personal mentor as it got for her. She was under my wing, and I was plenty generous. I don't know anyone around here who would have done what I did. I even gave her some of my best leads. And I don't care what she says now. There was something special between us.
And then it came to me. How dare he? But you can't speak the words in the moment like that. And everything comes out wrong and you end up looking like a fool. Of course, I can think of lots of things to say now.
But now, all of a sudden, because of some, I don't know what, it's her word against mine. I just can't believe I could lose my job over something like this. I mean, it's not like anything happened. She said no, I backed off. real gratitude.
Stan had no right, none. And I want it stopped. But something tells me that that's only going to happen if I leave.
I love this job, and I'm good at it. And nobody has a right to take that away from me.
As a manager, where do you get involved? Where do you step in and stop what you see may be happening or has happened?
Interview the complainant, the accused, and possible witnesses. Review personnel file documents. Check for sudden discrepancies in the work records. Assess severity of the alleged offense, behavior, power position, frequency of occurrence.
Who do I believe? But I tell you, it is really hard for me even to look at Stan ever since I heard. Well, I'm sorry, but civility is almost more than I can muster. Well, just in case. You know what I mean.
Yeah, here it is. All of which has to be evaluated based on something called the reasonable person standard. Show me this reasonable person. I'd like to meet one.
What was she thinking? I mean, he's a man, for goodness sake.
Assess the certainty that an offense was committed. Determine appropriate action to be taken. This during the busiest season of our most competitive year yet, when all we really should be doing is making money. And the truth is, I think the world of both of them.
It used to be men selling to men. Now more and more of the purchasing is controlled by women, so we're always adjusting. Some places you send a man. Other places seem to yield more from a female rep. I've always tried to bring women in. I've always felt that top management sets the tone. I've never had any trouble working with these women. I have 4 daughters. How could I possibly be responsible for this mess we have on our hands?
I think you can prevent a downward slide from sexuality and sexual harassment. Number one, by having good policies in place, by having a proactive mechanism. Folks know when you're in a comfortable environment that's safe, where there is a foundation of mutual respect and valuing one another. If you can establish that foundation across differences, across genders, you're going to avoid issues around sexual harassment. It's when you don't establish those foundation, those basic rules, where sexual harassment can enter into, and it can be very destructive from a cost, a litigation, and a productivity standpoint.
What oftentimes happens is that in a culture that's already laden with stereotypes, in a culture that's already laden with assumptions, laden with a way of interacting with each other, both men and women perhaps find themselves in situations that they cannot always control.
You are late. Your wife is going to kill me. You want me to cancel him?
No, I can't miss that. But something's got to go.
Yes, Walter, I know. You would prefer a root canal than to talk to Annette about Stan. But you're bad to want to put her off. Besides, she'll be here any minute.
What if I believe her?
Cross that bridge when you come to it. Here. I'll get Ellen to pick up your daughter's gift. That'll save you time on that.
You are a lifesaver.
I know. I will hold her here 10 minutes till you can review the file.
whose responsibility is it then? Is it the corporate responsibility? Is it the responsibility of the individual employee to deal with that situation that perhaps seems offensive, that perhaps seems somewhat out of control, but hasn't gotten there yet? How does that employee, especially if you're not in a position of power, make it known without jeopardizing her own situation, without jeopardizing her own credibility?
Have a seat, Annette. He's on an important call. It'll be a few minutes.
Organizations have to be very clear about what their culture is and what the expectation they have of individual employees in their relationships with one another and with customers. And I'm sure different companies have a different tone, different culture, depending on their product and the kind of clientele that they have. But I think most companies are going to recognize that they want their employees to treat each other professionally. They want their customers to see employees come in as professionals and clearly respect professional boundaries.
The question for me is what brought us together in the first place? If it's work, then the essence and the importance, the primary thing we have to talk about is that work. If we are connected outside with relationship, then that's a whole different issue. But if work is the primary reason why we're together, then we should concentrate on how to make that work become successful.
We have a choice about how to use that energy. We can stay in connection, be creative, have a wonderful, intimate experience, and choose not to sexualize it.
So that the energy that we feel when we're working more closely together and more intimately, instead of being sexualized as we're used to doing it outside the organization and as our traditional roles would have us do it, that energy can be transformed, can be redirected into work-related productivity.
Where we are today in this culture, I think, is sort of the equivalent of adolescence around learning to manage sexuality at work and outside of work. So we are in a phase where a more open dialogue about it, a more willingness to explore what all this is about would really help us move from adolescence to full-blown maturity, which is, I think, where all of us really want to get, so that everyone feels safe and honored in the workplace, but that we don't lose that wonderful, creative, fun, exciting energy.